I want to welcome everyone to the Health and Human Services meeting for June 3rd. You have an agenda in front of you. Any additions or changes? Actually, I believe we have we do need to adjust it. We appreciate everyone's efficiency, but Blake, I believe, has something he wants to say.
I would like to remove item 6 and add miscellaneous number 9.
Very good. Barb, would you like to support those? There we go. All right. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, very good. Minutes of May 6th, what is your pleasure? Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? All right, that brings us to our first chance for limited public comment. Other than our folks here in official capacity, would anyone you'd like to address the board? Amy's just here for fun. Okay, gotcha. All right. That brings us right into our juvenile justice millage program proposals and presentations. I believe those begin on page 4 of your packet. First up, everyone here is welcome to give us a brief overview of your program. Kyle Anderson from Truancy Intervention Mental Health, you are up first.
Good morning.
Morning.
Bear with me, this is my first time doing something like this. So.
You're fine.
My name is Kyle Anderson. I run the Truancy Intervention Program at CMH. Program has been in effect officially for 7 years in multiple other counties north of us. The Eaton County program was modified in the last fiscal year to include one full staff here solely for Eaton County. The TIPS model was here with CMH prior to that. The modifications included that full-time staff taking over, and then instead of having one therapist on board for all of the kids in this county, we're utilizing the entire CMH network with all of our programming in that capacity. Numbers-wise, well, the goal of the Truancy Intervention Program was actually built off a grant from the state of Michigan to keep kids out of the court system, keep them in the classroom. In the other 2 counties that we do that, we do a screening tool, a MACI, or a pediatric symptoms checklist, and we allow kids to answer those questions, kind of get a lay of the land for them, and provide services based on that assessment. In doing so, we provide one person that has access to that information with a kiddo, and then provides the recommendations to families, provides the recommendation to court staff, and allows them to make a choice on how they want to proceed with their care. We then put them into one of 3 programs, an urgent care model, which is very intense, a home-based program, which is almost as intense, not as often, and then an outpatient model, which is the kind of standard come to the office practice. So we're able to utilize our person to do that and then have all of our therapists and throughout our programming available for those kids. It provides ease of access to services. It is one of the fastest ways to get into mental health services these days. There are wait lists across the country, but especially here, into private practices and other agencies. We are mandated as soon as we see a kid, we get them in services within 2 weeks. So they see a therapist within 2 weeks within our program. Numbers-wise, just want to give you a couple things on the diversion. Since taking over with this newer model that we've instituted here in Eaton County with our sole person, the year prior, 2023, 2024, we had 140 total referrals. 61 of those were screened and assessed for services. That comes down to kids that families can say no. They can decline. We can't find them, things of that nature. This year, since October, since we took over the new model, we have 207 referrals and 92 screens already in 7 months. So those numbers have dramatically increased. The services to families have dramatically increased, and the ease of access to services have dramatically increased. With that said, our partnership with the court here specifically, and with Harriet Dean. Harriet sends us information on students all the time as a diversion model, and we link with her to get kids assessed and linked to services as well. As we expand, as we have in the other counties with this program, individual relationships with schools, individual relationships with law enforcement, parents can direct refer. The program is not solely just for the courts and for the kids that are coming in through the court system. It can be accessed by anybody in the county. Kids can self-refer after 14, parents can self-refer, counselors, secretaries, parents themselves, it doesn't matter where the kids come from. We are open and have access available to all those students. So. Thank you. Okay.
Was Kyle, are you gonna do the ICU also?
No.
Sarah's gonna do that.
Jody Nelson is here for that.
Good enough. Thanks.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thanks for introducing Jody, you're up. Great.
Brought a data sheet that I'd just like to share. Maybe we could pass that around. I'm not going to speak to it because it's pretty self-explanatory, but I'm Jody. I think this is the third time I've now come to speak to you, and I want to thank you. This sheet will talk a little bit about the ICU program that we coordinate and the Stress Busters groups that we provide throughout Eaton County. And it gives you some numbers and some details about the sites, our partners, and we are throughout Eaton County. We have Stress Busters groups in Potterville, in Eaton Rapids, in Grand Ledge, in Charlotte, and at Delta Township. And we have, I think, Rick Todd here from Crosswalk in Charlotte, and I don't know, I don't see Grace, but Grace was gonna join us from Eaton Rapids Teen Space. I think she was delayed, but they came to speak on support of behalf of continuing the funding for these programs. What we are doing with these Stress Busters groups is we are giving children skills that they would not be able to find. So many of them would not be able to find these skills in other settings. And if you look at the testimonials on the bottom of page 1 and the second page behind it, you'll see these parents sharing very common statements. And these are the parents of children who have attended these groups. And what we're doing with these groups is we're teaching children to understand their emotions, to recognize their emotions, and when those emotions are starting to rise within them. And that is not something that we do very well, I think, in general, in our schools. We don't do it as well in our communities. And as a therapist, a child therapist who's been doing this for 23 years, and as a parent whose child just graduated yesterday, and another child who's a sophomore, I can tell you, it is not easy to teach your own child some of these skills. But what we're doing is teaching them to recognize when they are starting to feel sad, when they are starting to feel frustrated, when they are starting to feel angry and irritated, so that they know what to do and when to do it so that those feelings don't rise and become larger feelings that can create problems for them. And we're starting with little kids, 3, 4-year-olds. We even have some 2-year-olds that come in just to be with their siblings who are in these groups. But what we're doing with these is when they learn to recognize when those feelings are starting to show up in their bodies and they recognize, okay, I'm starting to feel mad, I should take just a calming breath. And we see these kids doing that. These are kids that learn these skills and then don't go on to have these emotions become bigger problems as they age. Because we see that if we start young and teach these skills to these children when they're young, in middle school, they're going to be more likely to have the ability to manage those emotions. So they're not going to be dealing with issues of getting into as many conflicts with their peers. Or we're going to see that they're not going to be withdrawing. Or they're not going to be suspended because of fights that they're getting into because they don't have the social skills that we're trying to teach them. And we're going to see that these skills that they're developing at an early age are going to help lower the likelihood that they are going to be turning to more negative behaviors as they age. Substances, vaping, and alcohol, and shoplifting, and involvement with our court systems. So much of this really does take root at the emotional level because that drives the behaviors of these kids. And that is what we are really focusing on doing. Teaching them to recognize how to manage their stress, teaching them social skills, teaching them anger management, giving them a space where they can talk about these things, and they can talk about it in a way that is fun and engaging, and it normalizes these conversations. So that is what we are doing with the Stress Busters. And these statements that we have just here, we see them magnified throughout all these places. In the last year, we've added a couple of different groups. We're now at the Eaton County Youth Facility, and we've been working with them now for several months. And recently, the kids there asked if we could start teaching them life skills. So we started doing some rudimentary budgeting. My staff are not accountants, but started teaching them about budgeting and how do you interview for jobs and some of those types of practical life skills that they can use. And we've added an additional group out at the Little Vikings in Potterville. They liked it so much they want to add an additional classroom, so we're adding a classroom there. And we're doing an additional partnership with Eaton County RESA out at Delta Library, a parenting group that they have. So we do, this will be, I think it's like the 4th time we've now partnered with them, but it comes up throughout the years. A parenting group where we do the Lifesavers and they do their parenting group and they come together and the children and the families, they have these conversations about what they learned. And that is also another component of the Lifesavers. The Stress Busters. We teach them to have these conversations with their parents. And that's a big part of the normalizing of these conversations. So that's why we're doing what we're doing with the Stress Busters. Any questions that I can speak?
Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you for your presentation. It's interesting. I was listening to you talk about anger remediation, if you will. Wondering, are you developing a program that we can go into our jail with and try to teach our repeat offenders not to shoot at each other?
I can't speak to the adult world. I can only speak to what we're doing with the youth, but I do believe that the skills that we are providing these youth with are skills that they will carry into adulthood. Yes.
I would love to see an adult program because Delta Township, you mentioned Delta Township, one of your areas, that's the crime center of Eaton County right now, and we've got some issues up there we need to take care of. But thank you, I appreciate it.
Sarah may be able to speak more to the work that we do as an agency in the jails, but I can't speak to that. But thank you for the question.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Jody? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Harriet. It's also Harriet's first time here, too.
Yep, first time around the bus. Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. It's always fun to see everybody a couple times a year. As you know, truancy is a problem that is nationwide. It's getting worse and worse. We went through kind of a honeymoon period after COVID, where I think not only were parents glad to have their kids back to school, but kids were glad to be back to school too. Unfortunately, that honeymoon period is over, and chronic absenteeism and truancy continues to be an issue. And as you know, it's kind of a gateway behavior towards riskier behavior, towards getting into other crimes and things like that. So we would propose to continue our truancy early intervention and prevention program the way it's been over the years. Basically, we require that based on the statutes in the state of Michigan that require mandated attendance, that schools do their due diligence up front to try and engage parents and families in sending their children to school regularly. And if that doesn't work, then they send the case over to me. And my role is to try additional intervention using kind of the truancy officer hammer, if you will, although we try not to be a negative approach where we talk about the punitive. We try to work with families in the positive to encourage attendance and encourage their engagement in their own education. But if that doesn't work, then I have no alternative but to move these cases to either the juvenile court for additional diversion, or we also have our truancy court where we send the parents of youth who are under the age of 11. So we're addressing either parents or youth or both, depending on the age of the student and who kind of we can lay, I hate to use the word blame, but who we can look at and say, okay, this particular individual is responsible mostly for this child's lack of attendance at school. Because if they're not in school, they're out committing other crimes or engaged in other risky behaviors. This year so far, I have had 225 cases. I have filed 80 petitions. So that's well over, 145 roughly cases that I was able to keep from going into the juvenile system and using the resources that are set aside for probationary services or day treatment services or standard probation services, all of those things that take time, money, and effort and energy away from the other youth of the county, we are able to do that before they even get to that stage. So I think that's a real positive for this program. I can't stress the importance of the community mental health piece. We work very closely with Kyle and his staff. We have an absolutely seamless referral process going right now. He mentioned the number of cases that they've been able to get on their desk this year, and many of those have come from me, because I send every case that I get in for a screening. Not every parent takes advantage of that, but many of them do. And then those mental health services are there and are available for youth if necessary. So I can't stress that enough. Then, of course, the truancy court piece is huge, because what we're doing is holding the parents responsible under the compulsory attendance law as opposed to the youth law for getting their students in school every day. Because if students develop good habits early in kindergarten and elementary school, then by the time they get to middle school and they get to high school, they've already established their educational patterns. So they're less likely to then commit truancy and get involved in the juvenile system. So that kind of in a nutshell is the program. Kim, do you want to add anything?
Hi, good morning. I know a lot of you, but I'm Kim Thalson. I'm the Director of School Wellness and Prevention Services at Eaton Risa. And the truancy program is one of the programs that falls in our department. And just a couple of things that Harriet didn't mention is, you know, we talk about these, you know, few hundred cases that she deals with rather intensely. But through that program, we also have quite a number of things that happen that don't quite make the reports. And so some of those might be when we start to see the early warning signs, like a child is missing a lot of school, or they seem to be having behavioral issues, or they're suspended repeatedly for behavioral issues. Harriet has also does a referral with right to our Department of Mental Health Services at Eaton Risa. And so we'll have a case manager who, or a social worker or a counselor who will work directly with that child before they ever even make the standards of being referred for services with the truancy program. So through those things, it's a very multifaceted program where we're trying to kind of look at truancy, not as just kids staying home and watching cartoons, but kind of as like the iceberg on the water, where it's like at the top of it you see there's ice, but at the bottom there's all of these problems. There's problems within the family, or there's financial issues. Maybe the children are schools of choice in Grand Ledge, but they actually like live in Maple Valley, and there's a transportation issue, and we have to have a hard conversation with the family about the logistics of how they're choosing to do school. Could be some child abuse issues. We do make some referrals to CPS when we unearth things. And so those are just things that cross our radar because we're involved with these families. So it's just, it's a very meaningful program, and I think that we're catching kids in a way that keeps them kind of in the safety net of the school district, rather than slipping through the cracks and slowly kind of just disappearing and just staying home, and then, you know, receiving their education or lack of education just at home and not attending any kind of school. So while they're at school, they get to have folks with their eyes on them, making sure that they're okay. At the beginning of the school year, Harriet makes sure that all of the kids in her caseload are accounted for. And so what that means is when they don't show up for school, she sends police to do a welfare check on the children and make sure that they are okay. So this is the program that's really watching these kids and these families, because they've shown so many risk factors for things that we're concerned about. So,
Very good.
any questions?
Like,
Thank you, Kim. You know, I've always appreciate what you guys do, and you are truly boots on the ground. You know, I've involved with the school system in Grand Ledge, and I know that you're there all the time. What you've enlightened me with, and I would like you to to talk about it a little bit, is that you work with the TIPS program at CMH. You know, last year I was kind of wondering if they were in conflict or if they work together. Tell me, give me a little bit of a background of the two programs and how they work together.
The truancy intervention program that CMH runs really doesn't have anything to do with the same work that I do. Theirs is 100% a mental health piece. So while they're working with the families on mental health services, they may or may not talk about absenteeism, but we are really working, I'm still working with the family on the absenteeism piece while they're getting services for mental health. So they're not doing the same work. We're just working side by side.
So if you find
do
a
that.
child that's got a truancy issue and you talk to the parents and then it appears that they could use some counseling of some sort, you don't have the resources or the ability to deal with that, you would refer them over to CMH to work on those issues? Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yes, the exception to that is when we have our behavior mental health specialists that are working in every district in the county. For instance, I had a youth she was 7, and she had going through the separation anxiety, I don't want to leave mommy. So while she may not have necessarily been a candidate for mental health services, our behavior specialists were working with her on some techniques to overcome that. Like she had a picture of mom. She got to call mom once a day instead of, every 5 minutes crying for mom and disruptive. She got to go down at lunchtime and call mom, and then the mental health worker, continued to work with her over time until it was less of an issue. So it's things like that. So it's really almost 3 layers. There's my intervention that's 100% focused on attendance, and then there's the CMH piece, which is 100% focused on mental health. And then there's the behavior mental health specialist piece that is focused 100% on behavior. And occasionally, they may overlap, but we're not doing the same work, we're just complementing each other's work.
Okay,
Does that help?
thank you.
Okay. Jeannie?
First base.
Okay, so do we have any kids that are doing hybrid learning that would create a situation where they really should be in school but are on hybrid?
I think we have a lot of kids in the county who are schooling in a lot of different ways. So they might be completely homeschooled, they might be in an online school like one of the K-12 schools. They might, I think Relevant's a good example of like a hybrid where they do some schooling like online and then they have some required in-person attendance. Once children are referred to the truancy program, the parents are not, if they're involved with the courts, the parents are not allowed through the courts just to like quote unquote homeschool because they don't feel like dealing with us. And so they don't love that message, but because there's been identified risk factors, we don't just let them disappear without making sure that everything's okay.
Because of the different availability versus they got to get on the bus, they got to go to school, we know you're not here, cut and dried. That's what I'm wondering,
And we do work with the online schools as well. They send us referrals when students aren't attending. We are very concerned about the kids' safety when no one sees them.
Mark?
Harriet, Kim, thank you for coming today. My question is on the ugly side, okay? Do you find that there's a lack of support from parents to assure their kids are getting to school? I mean, and is there a problem with role reversal where the child becomes the parent and the parent is the child?
Yeah, I think if I could talk, that's where our multitude of programs kind of help. We have our parenting programs that Jody talked about a little bit, where we're trying to give parents some skills. But yes, we have some parents everyone has a school experience. We all have a school experience, and that might have been a good experience. It might have been a horrible experience where you didn't really see the value in it. And so some of our parents and our toughest families, I think, kind of fall in that bucket where they went to school, maybe they didn't finish school, but they saw very little value in it for whatever reason that might have been. And so their child is going and they don't want to go, and it's so much easier to not deal with that conflict in the home and to let their child stay home. They survived, without X number of years of education, and so their child will be fine as well. And then, Harriet can talk to you about there are a significant lack of boundaries with the parents. The one that always cracks me up, we all live in cubicle land in our office, is when the parents are confused about whether they can take a device away from their child or not. She's like, well, it's their phone, I can't take it away. And we're like, well, actually, yes.
Well, and that's the piece that I see, rather than a role reversal, I see a peer relationship.
Yeah.
Particularly with single moms and their teenage daughters. They simply will not draw any boundaries. And so these young ladies dress in a way that I never dressed at age 13, and no child or relative of mine would ever dress at age 13. They're very advanced for their age in terms of their behavior and their thinking, and they rule the roost. They are in charge, and mom can't make them do anything because they haven't established those boundaries. There's no chores, there's no rules, there's no curfews, there's no bedtimes, anything, those things that most of us grew up with simply are not there. And so we're struggling to not only help the student understand that they need to go to school every day, but helping the parent understand how valuable that education is and where their child is going to end up without an education. And they simply don't, like Kim said, they didn't have great school experiences, so they don't value the process at all. And it's become very much a peer relationship. And they're right, they will not take these devices away. And their answer is, well, they need to be able to reach me. Like, if you're in a school building, every classroom has a phone. There's no reason your child needs to have a phone at school, none.
Harriet, I just want you to understand that my wife and I were never considered the cool parents, okay?
That's okay. I respect that.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Any other
Anything
questions?
else? Well, thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you.
I don't see anyone here from CapCan. So we will move along to Bridget, Shared Housing Intervention.
Brian,
Yep.
who's on our board for that? Someone here goes to that.
I couldn't tell you, but it was indicated to me that the individual that was planning to come had something come up and couldn't make it, and wasn't sure if the substitute was able to make it in time. At this point, I don't see anyone else, so.
Oh, okay, because we have an assigned person that goes to
Right.
that board. Okay, thank you, Blake.
Well, good morning, Bridget.
Hi, good morning. I'm gonna just pass around a brochure and a fact sheet that has quite a bit of just numbers and facts about the programs that we do. So my name is Bridget Flynn. I'm the Assistant Director of Housing Services Mid-Michigan. So we're what's called the HARA for Eaton County. It's a Housing Assessment Resource Agency. So we have several different programs that work with folks who are either homeless or facing homelessness. We have some voucher programs that we administer, and then we also have a housing counselor on staff who works with folks who need to get home buyer education and those who are facing foreclosure. So for this particular application for our Shared Housing Intervention Program, what that is a program that works with families who have children, focusing more on school-age children, but we have expanded the program to families who have children of all ages. So these are families who basically don't have their own housing. So most of them are doubled up, meaning they're couch homeless with like family or friends. And one of the main goals is to work with these families in a diversion way so that they can avoid having to take their children into a homeless shelter. So we have a case manager that works with these families and a few main areas that we try to focus on. So financial literacy is a big one, working with these families on budgeting, so helping them see what money they have coming in, what their expenses are, what that would look like when they're in their own housing again, letting people kind of see, if they need to increase their income or maybe decrease their expenses, if that's an option too. So just kind of work with them to get to where they're financially stable to have their own housing again. So sometimes that can take, a month. Sometimes it takes several months. We'll work with families as long as needed, as long as they're working on their goals. So a couple other main services that we try to provide when working with families is, connection to other resources, pretty much whatever supports they need. We have good partnerships with lots of other agencies. This particular program, we actually cover the Tri-County area because we partner with some agencies in Ingham County as well, and we run the same program in Clinton. So a big piece of it too is to work with school-aged families to keep their children in school. So I know we've talked a lot today about the truancy issue. As we know that if, the more a family kind of moves around here and there, they're living with this cousin, they're living with grandma, moving the kids around, especially in different school districts, it makes it hard for the kids to stay stable and to stay in school. So we work really hard with the families to try to find ways to keep their children in a consistent school district. If they want to change districts, working through the smoothest way that they can make that happen. So the case manager, again, they can go into the home. We can work with families if they prefer to come into our office and work with us. A lot of the contact can be done over the phone or video conferencing these days too. We have a lot of families that like to access it that way, but a lot of our families I'm seeing more the last year or so where they're kind of getting back to, they want us to come and see them in the home. They want us to, come to them, which is beneficial because then we can work with the host family too. So the host family is the family that's letting the family stay in their home. So we work a lot with trying to get both sides to agree to, have this family stay there until they can get into their own housing. So that basically can look like, if there's little things like who's going to do the laundry, who's bringing in, these groceries and that to try to help our families live with the host family in the smoothest way possible. Because, one little tiff can happen and then our family is, out on the streets. So we try to really strengthen that relationship and get both parties through it in the smoothest way possible. So I know you guys can see in the app here some of the main goals, the details of how we do what we do. So is there any questions that anyone has for me? On the flyer, just to kind of point out on the right here, I believe, kind of on the right in the middle, housing programs. This is a flyer from 2021. So one change that we've had agency-wise since this was printed is that we don't have that prisoner reentry program anymore. But all the other programs we do still have.
Commissioner Brayler.
Thank you. I don't really have a question. It's more in line with a comment. I was very interested in your outline when I reviewed it. I commend that there is an organization that is looking at people who don't qualify as homeless per se, but are homeless in reality. And I found the fact that you are working with other agencies in a wraparound type of setting to be very important. The one concern I do have, and it's kind of to every one of these types of programs, you talk about financial literacy and teaching them how to budget. Back in the 70s, I had a similar job where I was overseeing about 180 families. And my experiences since I left that job was with basically the same economic situations that I found then. And my experience is that the vast majority of people are financially literate. And they know what their problem, they know what their budget is, they know what they can afford. There were very few families that I worked with. And there were some where I actually we would cash the checks and we would put the money into an envelope and say, you give this to so-and-so, you give this to so-and-so. But that was maybe 5%. And part of my concern with these programs is that sometimes we're well-meaning, we're all well-meaning, but we treat them as something less than adults. And so I would just caution that, a lot of people are jumping from place to place because they had the financial means that they were just one crisis away, and that crisis came. The car broke down, whatever the problem was. And so it's more of a cautionary tale.
I note that you say within your proposal that you treat people with respect, and I'm sure that you do. But I would just kind of put that out to everyone, you know? Most of these people know exactly what their problems are. They just are a little bit overwhelmed. So thank you for your efforts.
No problem.
Go ahead,
I would
Jeannie.
agree with that. We definitely try to help people, you know, to be independent and to take the skills that we're giving them and utilize them. Yeah.
As you're trying to find stable homes for some of these families, are you running into a situation, maybe over the last 12 months or whatever?
Well, finally, you guys have got the camera on me where I'm actually, that's probably my good side. As low as possible. Well, the low, it should be actually a little higher, so.
Yeah, I would say, you know, honestly, I haven't seen an increase in that. So I've been doing this work for quite a while, and I would say that's always kind of been a barrier for folks if they have maybe quite a few past evictions, or maybe they have some kind of criminal record. So what I've always seen is, you know, you got your apartment complexes that are run by property management companies. Those tend to have more of a screening process, where if we have families that are individuals who are have that barrier, we would recommend they look more at private landlords. So a private landlord tends to have some more flexibility in, you know, who they're going to choose to rent to or not. Plus, with us working in housing for so long, we have quite a few landlords that we have good partnerships with. So even though we can't, you know, vouch for somebody, we can definitely provide our clients with more options because we have that strong partnership with some landlords. So that helps.
Like in different situations, the credit scores are coming up as a barrier in a lot of cases in financing certain things that are needed.
You're welcome.
All right. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Morning, Bridget.
Morning.
My fellow commissioners probably heard me say this more than I can say. My wife works at the front desk of a Catholic church, okay? And she's just loaded with empathy and sympathy. And housing is one of the issues that come across her desk. And this holiday, on Friday, before the holiday, I said to her, I said, you're going to get calls because people are going to be evicted, or their utilities are going to be cut off, or something. Okay, so she goes off to work, and when she gets home at night, when she got home at night, she says, you won't believe it. The very first call I had this morning was a person getting evicted at 2 o'clock. And, you know, for the holiday weekend, things just shut down. So she scrambled. St. Vincent's Services, she referred them to St. Vincent's. And I don't know how things worked out, but I understand the housing issues and the support that the people need. So thank you for what you do.
No problem. Thank you.
Anything further? Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we recommend to the full board that these programs be allocated funds as outlined on, I believe it's page 4
Page 4.
of our packet, that would total a little less than $290,000.
We have a motion to move to Ways and Means. And support. Any discussion? Yep, Blake?
I think we're being a little premature at this particular point. I realize that these programs have been funded in the past. We're in the process of some transition right now with our youth facility and funding for the youth facility. Last year, this same conversation came up and we said, well, we're not doing anything with the youth facility this year, so we're gonna fund the programs. Now, a year later, we're gonna be opening the youth facility in August or September, and we are currently hiring and looking how the programs are gonna go. And this allocation is for the next budget cycle. So I think it's not time to move it. I think it's time to look at the whole picture and see where the funding is necessary and be a little more choosy maybe with some of the programs. And I think it's time for more evaluation than just what we've done in the past.
Go, Joe.
Thank you. If there's one lesson from listening to the programs this morning that we should take, is the idea that the earlier the intervention is for these children, the better chance they have for success. I understand that we're expanding the juvenile care facility. I understand there's going to be programs that are there. But I think it would be extremely short-sighted that if we ignored these types of programs and the work that they have done. I've told this story before. I practiced law for a very long time, and I did a lot of criminal defense work. And one of the things, I was at a conference years and years ago where they presented, and they were able to show that essentially by the time a child was 5 years old, if certain risk factors were available, unless there was some significant intervention, the youth facility as an example, that those children were on a track to failure and ultimately wind up in the court system as adults. And I represented a great many people over the years in which I tracked back and found that those factors actually were there. And so we've got people who are dealing with small children, young children. It'd be incredibly short-sighted of us to ignore these programs, because this is where, on the ground now, if these programs are successful, our need for the youth facility and all of the expansive programs there to now intervene when they are already going in the wrong direction will be much more expensive and much more painful for the children and their families. So I understand, but for essentially $290,000, I think we can find a way.
Yep, go ahead, Brian.
Question for Blake. What would your suggested timeline be then?
I think we need to, we'll get into the budget process, which starts this month. And I am in agreement with Commissioner Brailer that these programs are important and they have a value. And I'm not saying nix them all. I'm just saying don't pass them carte blanche right now. I think we should be looking at these in coordination with the budget process that we're starting at this particular point. And as we go through, we talk about reducing county services because of our financial situation. This is a prime example of that. I think we won't know how our financial situation will fare until later in the year. We'll have to make a decision about this before that particular time. But I do believe that we need a little more scrutiny. And I would like to wait because there's no rush. This isn't going to be allocated this month. This is not something that has to be done immediately. And I think we're better off wrapping this into the entire budgetary process.
All right. The motion on the floor is to move, oh, go ahead, Joe, sorry.
Yeah. I've been accused of always wanting the last word. Two things. One, they're in their budgetary process. And the longer that we delay, the harder it becomes for them to go forward in terms of their programs. And two, this is juvenile justice millage money. So our financial difficulties don't impact this. So I still think it's appropriate for us to go forward and tell them that the funds are there and they can go ahead and put their programs, continue their programs.
We'll go Jeannie, then Blake. Go ahead, Jeannie.
I do have a question as far as, it is juvenile justice millage money. I agree for all these programs, and I have been around here as well since 2007, 6. But my question is, are we going to need a different allocation from the juvenile justice millage that we have always given to the youth facility to sustain the youth facility and those programs? The same with the, are we going to thinking of giving them the same? We're not going to know that till we get into the budget process. With the expansion and what the difference is that we're going to need to take out of the actual juvenile justice millage to sustain whatever we think is going to need for operations at the youth facility. And I do understand that I think you need to get with 3-year-olds that can't stay in daycare centers because they have behavior issues and things. So I completely agree with what these programs are. I'm concerned about the youth facility and what we're going to need and what's available for from the juvenile justice millage.
Well, and that's the topic, yeah.
Right, so I think,
Again, to kind of pull from everyone's thoughts so far, I mean, truly the only issue, as I interpret it, is future budget of the newly expanded juvenile facility.
correct. And we
Goes
know-
correct, that money can't go, any other outside financial projects we're working on have nothing to do with this.
Nothing.
But those funds can be utilized into that facility. So that's the whole conundrum at the moment.
Ways and Means is in a week or so.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Blake, go ahead.
Well, you've summarized where we're at. I just think, I understand that they need to know. I understand that they've got budgets, but I also understand that we've got a lot of gray area, and it will be clearing up quickly. I mean, we're not talking about, we're talking, this is June, we've got a budget hearing on the 21st of this month. You know, we're doing it. We're working on the budget, and this funding, even though it's millage-based, this funding can be used in-house or it can be allocated out. Jeannie and I both have always advocated for using some of this monies for outside programs. She and I totally agree, but we just need to know where we're at with the process in-house. And we don't have clarity on that right now, and I believe clarity will be forthcoming. I think we're working on it. I think staff is working on it. Jeremy's putting together some plans. I mean, it's all coming together. We just need a little more time to have it. So I don't see the rush. So that's where I'm at. And I'll be voting no, not because I'm against the programs. I'm just against the timing, so.
Okay, understood. Anything further? Again, to be clear, the motion on the floor is to move the slate of programs of continuation budgets onto Ways and Means. Anything else? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
I believe that it is voted down. So again, in summary, I would like to reassure everyone in the room, will be revisited quickly. As we said last year, again, this was not a rash decision. This was a year in the works of continuing to figure out the budget for the new facility. So again, hopefully this will be worked out quickly. All right. Next topic is the strategic plan, substance use and misuse update.
So I wasn't at the last meeting, Logan was, so Logan's gonna report on this one.
Hello, everybody. So we're in the final stages of drafting the strategic plan for substance use and misuse. This month and next, subcommittee leads, who are those stakeholders, whether they have lived experience or work in the nonprofit world, are going to meet with the health department to review and workshop the draft plan and the outline of what's included in it. And then we are also working on planning for how the county will manage and maintain that plan so that it doesn't just sit on the shelf, which I know is very important for the health department as well as the county and the stakeholders that have been involved in this process.
All right, questions?
When are we gonna get the report?
Probably the end of June.
Is it still on? I think the plan is end of June, July, we should see it. But again, it is kind of dependent on this review process that they're doing with stakeholders too.
I believe they want one more meeting with the general group, the large group, to go over it and make sure everybody's all on the same page, basically. And then I was also at the meeting, although my connection didn't work, so I couldn't speak, but I could sit there and listen to everybody else talk, which I'm sure they were all very pleased with that. But yes, there's one more general meeting, large group that they're hoping to put together, I think, by the end of this month, and then basically bring everything together. And so the end of this month, just sometime in July, we should have the report.
Okay. That brings us to our miscellaneous resolution opposing the MDHHS plans to implement new conflict-free access and planning strategies in Michigan. This is on page 44 of your packet. I will pitch it to Joe.
Thank you.
Take it
I
from
did
there.
ask that this be added to the agenda. Let me back up a little bit and give a little history or background to this. The Michigan mental health system is a public-driven system. It's been in existence since the 1960s. I believe the legislation was passed in 1963 by President Kennedy. Our system is unique in how it is devised as a public system, in that we're one of 3 states that basically utilize this type of system. Part of that is that CMH is what is called capitated. And what that means is that all of the Medicaid money that is derived for the Medicaid lives in the Tri-County area is given to CMH to spend for the programs in which they have. It doesn't matter at the end of the day whether CMH serves 9,000 people or the 13,000 essentially they served the last year. That capitated money comes through to them anyway. Conflict-free is a concept out of the federal system in which they want to ensure that an assessing agency does not utilize that ability to profit themselves. So if I'm a for-profit corporation and I get paid by the number of hours that I expend services as well, or the number of people, however that is worked out, there is a concern at the federal level that you would have potential for fraud in that I would, as the assessing agency, as well as the service agency, would be feathering my own nest. So there is a requirement from the federal government that public or mental health services be essentially conflict-free. Michigan does not have that problem because, as I said earlier, the Michigan CMHs are capitated. So their funds are derived from the amount of money that is derived from the Medicaid lives that the area has. And so there is no area for fraud. There are some organizations that CEI does contract with. B Homes would be an example in which they are contracting with a provider. But it's CEI that makes the assessment and places their clients into those homes. What the state has talked about for the last, almost year now, is establishing some kind of conflict-free requirements that would separate the assessing agency and the providing agency. CEI is today the assessing agency, and they do provide services. You have heard in the past that there's been a significant push, and CEI is a CCHBC facility, which is some reforms that Senator Stabenow largely championed, in which it's expanded CEI's ability to provide services not only to Medicaid-eligible people, but also to insured people and the uninsured. In other words, the gamut of services. In the time that I've served as your representative on that board, it seems to me there have been two clear problems that weren't being addressed. The first is that so many people didn't know where to go for service. And so people who had insurance, as an example, would go to CEI and would be told, we can't take care of you. We can't help your child. We're not capable, we're not allowed to do that. And the other is that there just simply aren't enough beds in this state for those people who need to be hospitalized for a period of time. Conflict-free does not address that, either of those problems. CCHBC does, because it opens up the gamut of CEI services to the general public, in a sense. So the only reality that I can see from the proposals by the state, and they have made several, all of which would essentially divest CEI from an open door, is that it would leave, once again, the CEI in particular, but the public health system in general, would become simply providers. The only way this makes sense at some point down the road is that that capitation model would be changed to allow for other quote-unquote providers, and we're now talking about for-profits, to come in and make presentations, such as we had today, for funds. So I see this as a fundamental attack on the public health system. Michigan has consistently, in the time I've represented you on their board, been within the top 15 states for the services that they provide. There is always room for improvement, but I will tell you that when I first went on that board, I believe in 2004, CEI was servicing approximately 7,500 people. They're now over 13,000. They've expanded services. You've heard of some of them today. They are a champion for mental health, and it would be a shame to destroy the public health care system of this state, which I think stands as a beacon for recognizing the humanity of the people that they serve, and also the contributions of those who serve them. And so I would ask that you send this resolution on to the full board, in which it will then be distributed to those people who can finally sit down with the bureaucrats who, frankly, I don't think understand the public health care system, and put an end to this. Should this conflict-free be passed, the whole CCHBC model, which is the open door, you're assessed and you're immediately provided with services as quickly as possible, would be ended. And so it just it just boggles my mind that we are, as a state, are pushing more and more CMHs to go to the CCHB system, and then we're in the backside turning around and essentially destroying a key, or potentially destroying a key part of it. So I would thank you for your support.
Are you moving it?
I am moving it.
There we go. All right, now we have motion and support. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. It goes on to the full board.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate your support. It's nice to be at least 1 for 2. In baseball, I'd be headed for the Hall
You're
of
all
Fame.
in for the Hall of Fame, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for everything on our agenda today. We do come to our last moment of limited public comment, so if you would like to come up to the board, up to the podium and address the commission, go ahead. Good morning, Sarah.
Morning. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. And first off, please, thank you so much for supporting that resolution. We hope that with these resolutions happening all over the state, that MDHHS will reexamine some of the plans that they have been proposing. So it's very much appreciated. In the meantime, we are continuing our good work as a certified community behavioral health clinic, and that is making a big difference in our communities. I did want to just add to the discussion regarding the juvenile justice millage funding, because I think it's possible I'm the only one in the room that was here 21 years ago when the county commissioners and our school superintendents in Eaton County and CMH got together to address the serious problem, the growing problem of truancy in the area, with a recognition and understanding that providing these services, this early intervention, is a cost-saving measure and a pain-saving measure for our families and our community, for the courts. It has been, and TIP has been, an extremely successful program in diverting and getting help for families in Eaton County. It's been viewed as a premier program for managing truancy in a supportive manner across the state. So it really would sadden me and frankly kind of shock me if particularly that program was not funded to go forward. It was also considered the cornerstone of the juvenile justice millage funding, always highly promoted in terms of support from the public for the continued passing of the juvenile justice millage. I think our citizens like to see programs that are preventative, that keep people out of the juvenile facility. So I really encourage you to evaluate closely what you continue to do with the juvenile justice millage funding. And then, of course, the other programs presented today, the Eaton County, the Integrated Community Youth Outreach Unit, is an amazing program in our ability at CMH to work with youth and families without the necessity of them being formally enrolled into our services. It just allows us to be a presence in the community, to build those relationships, to teach really important skills to youth and families, and to help navigate those who have a need into our much higher level services. So just wanted to emphasize also that is an important diversion from problems later on. So thank you so much for indulging me.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate it. Anything further? Come on up.
Hi, I'm Rick Todd. I run the Crosswalk Teen Center here in Charlotte, and just wanted to add some support to the programs that have been mentioned. I see a lot of the Charlotte kids, I see a lot of the kids before and during and after the truancy programs that are provided. I see them before, after, and during the mental health things. And when Stress Busters come in that Jody talked about, they come in every Wednesday afternoon to our facility. It really does add a component of professionalism to our program. And they're meeting kids. We're averaging about 500 kids every year, unique kids, but multiple times, of course, in a week. And we're open 5 days a week, so we have lots of kids coming through all the time. There's a lot of at-risk situations that our kids are going through. And just as many services that we can offer, many mentors that we can offer, just help support those kids. So I just want to add that comment that these programs are really valued and needed in at least the Charlotte community, from my knowledge. Thanks.
Very good, thank you. All right, very good. If nothing further, again, I'll just say in closing to reiterate, this is more of a strategic step. This is, in my opinion, this is not a flat denial. This is a taking a breath to reorganize. Again, we've known this for over a year in advance of trying to wrap our head around the full expansion of the juvenile facility. So we appreciate your presentations, and we truly do value each program, and we'll do whatever we can. All right, with that, we stand adjourned.